I told Liam once that his feelings were too much. The way his voice cracked when he talked about his fears. The way his eyes watered during movies. I mistook tenderness for weakness. I thought love meant control, not surrender. Now I see him through someone else's phone screen. Her hand in his hair, his smile unguarded. It's strange how quiet my apartment feels without his laughter echoing off the walls. I used to roll my eyes when he cried over small things. Now I'd give anything to hear him tell me why they mattered. Maybe it's karma. Or maybe it's what happens when you shame someone for being exactly what they are. He used to say, "You only love the version of me that doesn't hurt." And I laughed. But now, watching him love freely, I can't help but wonder, was I ever brave enough to love him at all? Could you ever love someone's softness without trying to fix it? And what if the version you rejected becomes the one you finally crave? Liam used to tell me his emotions scared him, that he felt things too deeply, too fast. I'd brush him off, tell him to man up. I thought strength meant silence. But now, watching him glow in someone else's acceptance, I see how small my version of love was. I mistook stillness for safety, and now I live in a quiet that feels like punishment. I can't forget how his voice trembled when he said, "I just want to be allowed to feel." I didn't know those words would echo long after he was gone. When I met Sophia at a mutual friend's party, she didn't even flinch when I introduced myself as his ex. She said, "He told me you taught him how to feel less afraid." I almost laughed. I had taught him fear, not freedom. Watching her touch his hand, I realized she wasn't competing with me. She was completing what I broke. It's strange. Envy and gratitude can coexist. Late at night, I replay his voice messages. The ones where he told me he missed being understood. I used to delete them out of pride. Now I hoard them like relics. Each one feels like a confession I never deserved. I wonder if he ever thinks of me when it rains. He always said the sound made him feel less alone. I see his photos sometimes. Soft light, messy hair, his hand wrapped around hers. It hurts, but in a quiet, clean way. Like watching someone finally exhale. I realize now that I never wanted less emotion. I just didn't know how to hold it without drowning. Maybe that's what growth is. Learning that love doesn't need to be neat to be real. It's been 8 months. I stopped counting after the first 4, but time still folds around his name. I see him sometimes. Not in person, but in the spaces where we used to exist. The bakery that sold his favorite almond croissants, the old movie theater with the broken red seats. I stand outside, pretending I'm passing by, but every corner whispers him back into my life. They say healing isn't linear. I think it's a loop. One that drags you back to the moment you said the wrong thing again and again until you finally learn what love actually meant. Liam posts poems now. Simple ones. About softness, about hands, about forgiveness. I used to tease him for writing. I said feelings don't need words. They just need action. But now I see that words were his way of staying alive. His lines ache with tenderness, and everyone feels like it's written to the woman who let him go. I want to comment to say, I get it now. But what right do I have to speak in a story I ended? Sophia and I met again by accident. A small bookstore, the kind with dust and silence that smell like old hearts. She recognized me first. Her smile was shy, like she didn't want to make me uncomfortable. We talked about nothing. Books, weather, the kind of polite distance women keep when love once crossed paths. But when she mentioned Liam's laugh, something in me broke quietly, like glass under cloth. I envied her calm, the way she spoke of him without needing to own him. I've started writing letters I'll never send. They're messy, full of half-thought apologies and confessions I never had the courage to say. Sometimes I read them aloud, To the empty room, to the ghost of us. I'm sorry for not holding your heart when it trembled, one of them says. I imagine him hearing it, smiling, forgiving me quietly. I know he won't come back, but maybe forgiveness doesn't mean return. Maybe it just means I can finally stop running from the truth. Last night I dreamed about him, not as my lover, but as someone walking past me on a quiet street. He smiled, nodded, kept going. There was no anger, no ache, just stillness. When I woke up, my chest felt lighter, like the tide had finally gone out. I opened the window, let the morning in, and realized healing isn't forgetting someone. It's remembering them without needing to fix what's already healed. When I finally stopped chasing closure, life began to feel like something I could hold again. I started painting, something Liam used to beg me to do with him. It's not about art, he'd say. It's about letting yourself feel. Back then, I couldn't. Now, I smear colors across canvas, watching blue and red bleed together, grief and love, indistinguishable. The first time I finished a painting, I caught myself whispering his name, not out of pain, but out of gratitude. He had tried to show me softness wasn't weakness. It was art. Liam's new life doesn't hurt the way it used to. Sometimes I see his face in mutual friends' stories, laughing, carrying groceries with Sophia, his hair longer now, his smile softer. I pause, watch for a second, and then move on. That's new for me. Once, I would have spiraled, compared myself to her. Now, I see him and think, he's okay. We both are. Maybe the truest kind of love isn't the one that ends perfect. Maybe it's the one that teaches you how to begin again, even without them. I ran into Liam for the first time in a year. It was a quiet cafe on a weekday morning, the kind of place where time slows down. He looked the same, just softer. When he saw me, he smiled, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. We talked. Not like lovers, not like strangers, but like two people who had once seen each other's souls and survived. There was no bitterness, only honesty. And when he said, "You seem lighter," I wanted to cry. Because for the first time, it was true. After that meeting, I walked home through the park. Everything looked sharper. The green of the trees, the laughter of strangers, even the sound of my own footsteps. I realized I had been living muted for so long, afraid to feel too much again. But maybe feeling deeply isn't dangerous. Maybe it's the only proof that we're still alive. Liam once said, "Love is supposed to make you softer, not smaller." For years, I confused softness with loss. Now, I see it as strength. That night, I stood on my balcony, the same one where I used to smoke away my guilt. The city hummed beneath me, alive and distant. I thought about all the versions of us that had lived and died in this space. The woman who shamed him, the man who cried, the silence that followed. I whispered into the dark, "Thank you." Not to him, but to the lesson. Because love doesn't always stay, but it always leaves something worth keeping. I started seeing someone new, Evan. He's calm in the way the ocean looks calm from a distance. Steady, but full of hidden tides. The first night he stayed over, I caught myself apologizing for crying at a movie. He just smiled and said, "I like that you feel things." That broke something open in me. I didn't realize how long I'd been holding my breath, waiting for permission to be human again. Liam taught me softness. Evan reminded me it's okay to share it. I told Evan about Liam one night. Not everything, just enough. He didn't flinch. He didn't try to outshine him or erase him. He just listened, really listened. And when I finished, he said, "I'm glad he taught you how to feel." I didn't expect that. I'd been bracing for jealousy or judgment, but instead I found understanding. Maybe that's what love is supposed to be. Not ownership, not fear, but space. The kind that lets your past breathe without suffocating the present. Sometimes, when I paint now, Evan joins me. He doesn't know what he's doing, and that's what I love most. He laughs when the colors mix wrong, and I laugh too. The kind of laughter that feels like healing. I used to think love was serious, all weight and consequence. Now I think it's the small, ordinary moments that matter. The sound of his brush hitting the canvas, the streak of blue across his cheek. The way he looks at me like softness isn't something to be ashamed of. One afternoon, while sorting old boxes, I found a photo of Liam, the two of us on the beach, his arm around me, wind tangled in our hair. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for the ache, but it didn't come. Instead, there was warmth, like remembering an old psalm. I slipped the photo into a drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it. Because some stories don't need to be rewritten. They just need to be honored for what they were. Later that evening, Evan found me on the balcony, staring at the city. He wrapped his arms around me, rested his chin on my shoulder, and whispered, "You don't have to be perfect with me." I closed my eyes, felt the warmth of his breath, and thought, maybe love isn't about finding someone new to replace the past. Maybe it's about finding someone who helps you love yourself through it. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I just felt whole. Spring came quietly that year, not in a rush of color, but in small, patient signs. A new plant on my windowsill. The sound of rain against glass. Evan humming in the kitchen. I used to dread stillness. It felt like loneliness. Now it feels like peace. Sometimes I think about how I used to push love away when it got too tender, too real. But now I let it stay. I've learned that softness isn't something to survive. It's something to belong to. Evan met Liam once, unexpectedly at a gallery where my paintings were displayed. The world has a strange way of folding time. They shook hands. It wasn't awkward, not like I feared. Liam looked at me, then at my work. Strokes of blue and red tangled in quiet motion, and said, "It feels like you." Evan smiled, proud. In that moment, I realized the past and the present didn't have to fight. They could simply coexist, like two waves touching the same shore. After the exhibit, Liam and I spoke alone for a few minutes. He told me he and Sophia were engaged. I didn't feel pain, just warmth. The kind that comes from seeing someone you once loved, finally loved right. I told him I was happy for him, and I meant it. Before he left, he said, "You were the beginning of my healing." I wanted to tell him he was mine too. But some things don't need to be said aloud. They're already understood. That night, I painted again. Not out of sadness, but gratitude. The canvas turned into a sea of color. Every shade of what love had been to me. Wild, painful, tender, freeing. Evan watched from the doorway, silent, respectful of the sacredness of it all. I didn't need to explain it. He just nodded, like he understood. Maybe love isn't about knowing everything. Maybe it's about being willing to sit quietly beside what can't be explained. Later, I stepped onto the balcony again. The air cool, the city humming below. For the first time, I didn't think of what was lost or what could have been. I thought of what is, of how far I've come from the woman who told a man he was too emotional. Maybe that was never about him. Maybe it was about me, afraid to feel too much. Now I feel everything. The ache, the joy, the stillness, and I'm not afraid. Because softness, I've learned, was never weakness. It was the beginning of love all along. Time moves differently when you stop measuring it by heartbreak. Months slip by like breath. Quiet, natural. Evan and I moved in together. There's laughter now in the corners that once held silence. He leaves notes for me on the fridge. "You're enough. Don't forget to eat. Small things, but they root me. Sometimes I still dream of Liam, not in longing, but as memory. A familiar echo in a new life. Healing doesn't erase the past, it folds it neatly into who you are. One evening, I got a message from Liam. A simple one. Thank you. No explanation, no hidden meaning. Just that. I sat with it for a long time, smiling at the way healing finds its own words. I replied, "For what?" He said, "For not letting me stop believing in love, even when it hurt. I never expected that my mistakes could become part of someone else's wholeness. Sometimes, love's greatest gift is the lesson it leaves behind." A few weeks later, I met Sophia again, by chance at a flower shop. She was picking out lilies for their wedding. She looked radiant, the way people do when they're loved without conditions. We talked for a while, light conversation, easy laughter. Before leaving, she said, "He still talks about how you helped him open up." I smiled because I finally understood. Love isn't a competition, it's a relay. We pass pieces of ourselves forward, hoping the next person holds them more gently. That night, I told Evan about meeting Sophia. He listened quietly, then said, "You sound proud of them." And I realized I was proud that we all found our own kind of peace. Love doesn't always end in togetherness. Sometimes it ends in evolution. There's beauty in that. We carry each other, even in absence, even in the versions of ourselves we leave behind. Later, as I watched the city lights fade into night, I thought about the strange symmetry of it all. How love came full circle. I used to fear that being too emotional would ruin everything, but now I see that emotion isn't chaos. It's connection. It's truth. It's what makes us human. And maybe, just maybe, the point was never to find the person who could handle all your feelings, but to become the one who can. The day of Liam and Sophia's wedding came like a chapter I didn't know I was ready to close. I wasn't invited, and I didn't need to be. I saw a photo online, both of them laughing under strings of white lights, rain falling softly around them. My heart didn't ache this time. It hummed. Because this was what love was supposed to do. Grow, stretch, evolve beyond its old borders. I whispered a quiet blessing to the screen. May you both always feel safe enough to cry, and strong enough to stay soft. Evan found me sitting by the window that evening watching the rain. He didn't ask what I was thinking. He just sat beside me and held my hand. That's the thing about love now. It doesn't demand. It simply exists. He looked at me and said, "You seem peaceful." I smiled and replied, "I finally am." Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't comparing or chasing. I was just living, fully, softly, brave. I started teaching painting classes. It wasn't part of any grand plan, just something that felt right. Watching others create reminds me how vulnerable art is, how it mirrors love. Messy, honest, unafraid. One student asked me once, "How do you know when a painting is finished?" I told her, "When it no longer hurts to look at." And as I said it, I realized that was true of people too. Liam, Sophia, Evan, even me. We were all still paintings, just learning when to stop bleeding and start shining. Sometimes at night I still talk to the version of myself who couldn't understand him, the woman who flinched at tears, who thought control meant love. I tell her it's okay, that she was doing her best with the tools she had. Forgiveness isn't always about others. Sometimes it's about holding your own hand through the dark and saying, "You've come far enough. You can rest now." I let her go gently, like setting down a heavy book I no longer need to carry. Morning again. The city hums like a promise. I open the window, and the breeze carries the faint smell of jasmine. Evan's still asleep, one arm sprawled across the bed. I look at him, at this new life, and I smile. I think about Liam, somewhere out there, probably laughing with Sophia, and I feel nothing but gratitude. Once, I told him he was too emotional. Now, I understand that emotion was his gift to me, the spark that lit my way home. And maybe that's what love truly is. The echo that teaches you how to stay soft, even when the world tries to harden you.